Yeah, sorry guys, it's been like a solid 24 hours since I just saw Madam Web, and I still can't stop laughing. I had an absolute blast checking that out last night. Theater was packed. There were at least 20, maybe 24 seats out of 500 that were sold. People chuckling, laughing, groaning the entire time. All 2 hours of this bloated runtime of a mess. But I haven't had that much fun in a movie in forever. It was kind of like being at a hockey game or a basketball game where your team's losing, but you're gonna lose, so you have a couple extra drinks anyway. You just kind of make a couple friends in the stands and you just go through it together, and everything works out okay. Guys, I don't even know where to begin with this movie. It's bad on a level that I haven't seen in a hot minute. Is it worse than Miss Marvel? Not Miss Marvel. That was actually an alright show. Is it worse than The Marvels, the movie? I don't know. It seemed like the thing I'm supposed to put in a thumbnail for this kind of video. I mean, maybe is there two different ways you can be bad? You know what I mean? Like, on the one hand, you could have like 10 pounds of like hot dog shit, and then on the other hand, you could have like 5 pounds of like wet dog shit. I mean, like,
good question.
You don't want either. Oh, I just wanted the mic. Oh man, you don't want either kind of shit on your kitchen floor, but I mean, you probably just want the hot dog shit for ease of cleanliness. Maybe that's what this movie is here. This movie here, I'll give them this. At least they kept the budget to a reported like 80 mil and change. So if this movie makes next to nothing, and it's probably tracking to make next to nothing, at least it'll only be a modest bomb compared to some of these atomic bombs that have come through lately, like the Marvels, whose budgets were like 275 million before production and all that other good stuff, and then the global take as of like a week ago was still barely 200 million. So I mean, this movie's gonna bomb, absolutely, unequivocally. Its 6-day haul is gonna be an embarrassing 30 million or less. It's embarrassing that we're doing 6-day opening weekends. That's just ridiculous. Like I said, 2-hour runtime, atrociously long, very dull, very boring. Nothing close to superhero stuff happens here, and that's probably the biggest thing this movie got wrong, is that they tried to adapt a character that literally 99% of the walking around, Johnny Q public kind of folks have ever heard of. There are comic book people that have never heard of this character. You know what I mean? Madam Web, not a power player, not anybody you need to know in any kind of way. And it's like they grabbed down on like the L list or the K list or somewhere deep down, and they tried to put her to the forefront, but they messed up in a bunch of ways in this movie. They changed her origin. I had to go do some fact finding because I wanted to have a little info. They changed the origin. It made it unnecessarily complex. It didn't work. It didn't add up. They introduced 3 characters who took something like 25 years or so in comic print history to be like her wards in the movie. Like the 3 other girls in the movie she's supposed to take care of are all different women who have been Spider-Woman in the comic like over the decades, as they relate to her. But it's like they did the thing that we rip on DC having done all the time, where they started with the team up movie and then they wanted to branch out into the other ones, when obviously it always should have been the reverse, like how early better Marvel used to do it. You had to establish Madam Web first and foremost, like in a Spider-Man movie, so we know who she is. Keep the origin for real. If you can't do that, if you can't have an old lady in a spider-themed, web that keeps her alive and provides for her mobility and life, and you wanted to put her down into like 30-year-old Dakota Johnson era, I don't know, that way she can walk around and be led around and not do anything interesting. Maybe rethink your whole project and not do that movie. Like, do something more compelling. And more compelling means to me that I think that there was a core idea here that would have worked in any other genre besides the superhero genre. I feel like maybe I've seen movies like this before, like circa early 2000s, late 90s, mid 2010s, whatever. Like, have Dakota Johnson just be a character that has some kind of psychic ability for whatever reason. Like she can see glimpses into the near future. And for whatever chance of fate puts her in the path of the other three women, she knows that there's a serial killer, doesn't need to be Spider-Man or Spider-Man themed villain, just a serial killer is tracking these three, and she's the only one that can see what's happening. So not only does she have to convince them that it's going to happen, and then, you know, that obviously is a big scene that would come up where she's proven to be correct. She could have those kind of arguments with her family and friends that she's not crazy, and that she can see this coming, and then maybe she does predict something awful that happens and then she gets blamed for it. But I think this concept would have worked really well in kind of like some kind of like borderline supernatural thriller. It didn't need the trappings of superhero stuff or Marvel or Spider-Man or Madam Web for this to work. In fact, I think this would have been better, you know, shot for like 40, 50, 60 mil tops. You get, you get Sandra Bullock and somebody else in here. You throw it on Netflix. You have these three leads, the younger Spider-Woman characters. They're all very attractive. I thought they were all kind of likable for the limited stuff they got to do. But I think this was a better movie in a different genre. It didn't need to be superhero. I think that's a drawback here because it didn't work here. And that dynamic of having her try to lead three other people around while she wasn't like a superhero herself yet. I mean, by the end of the movie, she has like her one moment, whatever. But the three girls that are in the trailer, the spoiler alert for this, guys. The three other women you see in the trailer in their various costumes, those are flashback or flash forward scenes, I guess, if you to use the proper word. That's all you get of them suited up like that. It's the same clip that they use almost, I think it was 2 or 3 times to show what they're going to become later. That movie's never gonna happen. I'm gonna just put that shit away right now. That's never coming through. That's all you get. So for the duration of this movie, brings me kind of my next major gripe with the film. Nobody's in costume but the villain. And the villain's costume is a crappy ripoff dark Spider-Man suit that looks really cheap. I mean, it looks like some Halloween store, some iParty kind of costume, something you'd get on Wish and have delivered last second for, you know, a party you got invited to. Not good, you know, no, it didn't, there were no superhero vibes to this movie at all besides that character who would, again, was about as unforgettable, that character who was about as forgettable a villain as I'm never going to remember. I'm fumbling over words. It was so boring. Malekith from Thor Dark World. At least I remember his name. What's his face from Iron Man 3? Can't remember his name. But like bottom barrel villain in this movie, and that's all you get. And his only motivation in this movie is to eliminate these 3 chicks who aren't superheroes, and has 57,000 opportunities to do it. And even though he's super powered, he can't get it done because plot and reasons. Foolish, but not tolerate it. It was to sit there for 2 hours and just watch these people fumble over one another. I don't even know. Like it was just bad. It was just bad stuff. And I'll say this, it wasn't bad for all the reasons that, you know, a bunch of the usual suspect channels I enjoy. They're gonna take this movie apart and do the girl boss thing and do the woke thing. And I'm not sounding the alarm here on that. Like I think I've retuned and recalibrated my radar for that kind of stuff. It wasn't. There was one girl, there was one woman, because to be fair, she's an adult, she's grown. One woman and her 3 protege to-be's, but none of them flexed that card. That wasn't really a thing. They weren't crapping on any of the guys. You know, Dakota Johnson or Cassandra Webb, the character name, her boss, her best friend, her partner, they're guys. They're treated respectfully. There was nothing about that. You know, like the villain wasn't on some misogyny kick or anything like that. I didn't pick up those vibes at all. It was just bad. It was like how we used to think movies were bad in like the 90s or the 2000s before we had to justify whether or not something met DEI quotas or something was, you know, not woke enough, you know what I mean? Or something was way too, like, no, before we had all that, we just had bad movies. We used to be able to talk about that. So that's what I'm going to do right here. Is just say, no, this movie just sucked. Dakota Johnson in this movie reminded me of what Mark Wahlberg looked like in The Happening. It was tonally wrong. The delivery was wrong. None of it was intentionally funny. Like the jokes they tried for did not land, and everything else that people were laughing at was the cringest of crap that people were saying that we knew they were trying to say to elicit a particular response, and it didn't work. Like there was no moment in this movie where somebody delivered that snappy one-liner, like comeback rebuttal, where you'd be like, oh damn, I can't believe he said that. No, There was no, there was no moment like in Avengers where they circle up and, the crowd goes wild, or, when like Thor shows up in Infinity War and people go nuts, any of those other moments where the portals open. Like, there was, not that I expected anything crazy like that in this movie, but there was really nothing to grab onto here. I'll say this. Did I enjoy any parts of the movie? Yes, I did enjoy leaving. That was a big part I enjoyed. To be real, I thought some of the soundtrack, some of the score was okay. Not the soundtrack, the score, the in-movie, kind of like the cinematic music. Not bad. Superhero vibes for sure with that, like the rising, inspirational, hopeful stuff. That was there. That was cool. Not nearly enough, to make the movie like likable or enjoyable on that level. The three actresses that they had playing the not yet Spider-Woman. I don't know. I say the same shit with Spider-Man. I have a problem with that. There wasn't enough to any of them, but there wasn't enough to dislike either. Like Sydney Sweeney's character was supposed to be doing like the nerdy girl who kind of grows into her own. It didn't really go anywhere. There was another girl. She was Hispanic. I don't remember her name. She's in comics. She's a legit character. She had a little backstory about her father was deported and she was living on her own, but they didn't give you enough of, that relationship or let her grow into anything. And then the other one, Maddie Bradley. I don't remember the name. Sorry guys, I'm not an expert on Madam Web. Again, like they didn't give her enough to do. Her parents were wealthy billionaires that were in China developing plastics or something, and she hated them because she was the closest thing to like what they wanted. I think the typical Gen Zer, I hate capitalism. I hate my parents because they're rich and they have money, but they're polluting the environment and something. But it wasn't ever over the top. It didn't really add up in anything that annoyed me. But I'll say this: the three of them together had very little chemistry as a group of people that were being led around by the main character. They didn't really, there was nothing fun about it. None of their banter was witty. It wasn't like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer era banter between any of the characters like that. So it's just kind of a waste of time. Like I'm still having been out of there, because every now and then when I'm driving or when I was between, things at work, one more stupid thing they did in the movie would just pop into my head. Like walking away from like an ongoing campfire when you knew you weren't going to return. I'm just like, really? For number one, obviously you just don't do that. And then number two, when you're trying to hide from people, you probably don't light the campfire and then leave it lit anyway as a matter of they can follow you. That was kind of dumb. There's another like the big setup for the end of the movie is Cassie Webb has to go back to Peru to find the spider people that her mom left in her diary that might be able to explain her powers and teach her what she needs to know. So this chick manages to book a flight to Peru, go to Peru, not to the resort or anything, but like she gets to Peru and then instantly in the jungle is where she needs to be, that her mom left like directions and coordinates and shit where the research she was doing took place, so she can pick up that trail. Does everything she needs to do there, and I won't spoil that because there was some interesting stuff there. It was kind of like the revelation of her power set was there, so whatever, that's in there for you. So then she finishes that, gets back on a plane, heads back up to Brooklyn, right, or Queens, or wherever they are in New York. And I'm like, okay, all this happens in the movie in like lapse time 11 minutes. I mean, in our time, about 11 minutes. But in the movie, they want me to believe like this also happened in 11 minutes. So like, guys, it's an 8-hour flight each way, If she got lucky and airdropped right on top of where she needed to go in Peru, it's still 16 hours. Like I don't, it was just foolish because all this time while she's down there doing that, she's left the three girls with Ben Parker of all people, in 2004. I'm not sure that timeline is at all, but she leaves the three girls with Ben Parker while forgettable villain guy is out there and has access to like NSA tracking equipment in 2004, like massive facial recognition technology that works flawlessly. Sure. All that's happening, and they're just kind of hanging out in his sister-in-law's house and having to, go deliver a baby because she goes into labor, and of course, if it's Ben Parker's sister's baby being born, you know who that is. And therein lies the rub with the timeline stuff, because if these girls are all like 16, 17, 18, and Peter's just being born in this movie, you don't say it, but if he's being born in this movie, like, okay, so by the time he's 20, they'd all be like 40. That doesn't jive. None of that doesn't make any sense. This is what happens when people don't look into things. I don't know. It was hilariously bad. I'll leave it at that. It's gonna bomb. It's gonna be embarrassing. As you can see on the thumbnail. Oh no, I changed the thumbnail. Never mind. The score line, I'll put it here, from Rotten Tomatoes. Nobody likes this, guys. It's not just people dunking on it because it's female lead. Like, enough of that. Like, don't come at me in the comments with that nonsense. I've already fired off like 6,000 replies across different comment sections and videos and everything about literally the decades worth of female characters we're down for to stop. Sometimes, like I said, a movie is just bad for the sake of being bad. It doesn't matter what kind of chromosomes you had in front of or behind the camera. Things are just bad sometimes, and we got to get back to a spot where we're comfortable saying that. I think I'm gonna bounce, guys. Madam Web, don't see it. I hear it's already scheduled for a Netflix release because there's some new partnership with Sony and Netflix. Dude, keep your money in your pocket. Same thing I said about the Marvels. If you got nothing to do on some Saturday when it comes out on streaming, knock yourself out. You won't hate yourself for it, but you're probably not gonna get the same opening day laugh and enjoyment I got out of it. Because we had a blast in the theater just roasting this shit in real time. I wish I could go back and see this again, but there's zero chance I'm dropping money to go do that.